The story I'm going to share occurred over the course of several years, and only recently ended. It affected almost all of the most important people in my life, affecting us even today and likely for the rest of our lives. I wanted to share it so everyone can understand just how out of control a seemingly harmless situation can become. Due to the length of this event, I'll likely break the story up into several parts. First, let me lay it out for you. My brother has always been my closest friend. He is easily the most loving and genuine person I have ever met, and is loved by pretty much everyone he meets. Despite this, he hasn't been in many relationships. I think it's partly due to the fact that he's a very all-or-nothing type of guy. When he falls deeply and blindly. A blessing and a curse, I guess. Anyway, the few girlfriends he's had I've known quite well, despite being nearly 8 years younger than him. Most of them have been nice, normal, pleasant girls, with the exception of a few. We had high hopes that he would settle in with a long-term wonderful girlfriend as he entered his adult life. We had no idea we'd spend 6 years sharing a hell with him, our family, and our close friends, all by the hands of one girl. I'll call her Pam. I met Pam when I was 11, my brother 19, and she was 17, graduating high school. I remember being surprised to have him introduce her right off the bat as his girlfriend, since neither my parents or I had heard anything about her. But she was kind, warm, an honor student, and beautiful. I admired her immediately. For the first year of their relationship, Pam never seemed off. She was always happy, always kind, and always had good stories to tell. She and I grew closer, as she seemed eager to bond with me, and it was like having an older sister. We shared some of the same interests, and friendship became easy between she and I, as I was mature for my age and she was so inviting. But halfway through their second year of dating, we started noticing things about Pam. Just small, odd habits she had. If someone was having a conversation with my brother that did not directly involve her, or that she wasn't a part of, she tended to insert herself as best she could, sitting closer to my brother, laughing a little louder, calling him away, etc. If any of our family or friends would ask my brother questions about college or future aspirations, she'd grow increasingly uncomfortable and sometimes made comments like, "I hope you have it all planned out, 'cause I'm going wherever you're going." My parents and I would chuckle about these behaviors, assuming that Pam just loved my brother and was a bit protective. We liked her a lot and had high hopes for a relationship. I hate to think now how blind we were. One night, my brother came home late from a party. I was 13 at this time. He was about to turn 21. He walked in the door, our parents were already asleep, but I was up in the living room. I could immediately tell he was upset about something. I asked him what was wrong. As he walked into the kitchen, I realized he had a large welt on his cheek. I asked, "What happened to you?" He said, "I got into a fight. It's cool." This immediately raised suspicion as my brother was as far from the fighting type as you could be. "A fight over what?" I asked. "Pam," he said simply and went to his room. The next morning, he was driving me to my soccer game and I pried again about what had happened. He didn't answer at first, but then said, "Pam is kind of weird." I asked, "How so?" He said, "I don't know. She likes to start things." Pam was a pathological liar. Apparently, she did it all the time. Looking back, the constant news stories of places she'd been and things she'd done didn't seem to be truthful. That night at the party, Pam had told my brother that another man at the party had tried to take advantage of her. My brother, being the man he is, confronted him and he said, "I've never seen her before." And a fight ensued over the accusation. On the car ride home, Pam said that my brother must have misinterpreted her words and that nothing close to the guy trying to take advantage of her had occurred. The lying seemed to be a detrimental bump in the road, and my brother broke things off. After several weeks, Pam contacted me asking if I wanted to go shopping with her. Having had a good relationship in the past with Pam, I agreed. My parents thought it was strange that a 20-year-old wanted to spend time with her ex-boyfriend's 14-year-old sister, but they let me go anyway. The day started pleasantly. Pam caught me up on her life and asked how I was, how my family and brother were. Nothing seemed strange until she began to bring up uncomfortable conversations. She explained to me that she had had a traumatic childhood, and that's why she lied so much. But she also aggressively defended herself, saying, "Whatever your brother told you was a lie. He was the one telling lies. That's why I had to break up with him." She seemed to jerk around the conversation from normal to deeply personal and strange topics. She claimed in detail a lesbian experience she had had after ending her relationship with my brother, and told me that I should try it when I came of age, of course. I became increasingly uncomfortable with the conversation. She noticed and immediately apologized, saying that she really liked being my friend and that she loved my brother and that's why she was acting so crazy. I told her I liked being her friend too and that I understood her feelings. This was a mistake. This is when the phone calls began. It started with just one. She called me a week after we hung out at 10 p.m. She was sobbing and saying that she was so sad without my brother and that she needed to get him back. Then they happened nightly, later and later each time. I'd be dead asleep at 2 a.m. and receive a sobbing, hysterical, and desperate phone call. I felt so much pity for her that I continued to answer. One call was different than the other. She wasn't hysterical. She wasn't crying. I picked up the phone at 1:30 in the morning and heard a level-voiced, monotone Pam. She said one sentence, "Tell your brother I'm going to slit my throat tonight." And then she hung up. I felt numb. I had never experienced that before. No one I knew had ever behaved that way. I texted her over and over again, asking if she was okay and telling her not to do anything. I panicked. I thought I had done something wrong, and that since she told me I would be responsible in some way. The next day I told my brother what had happened, and he said he'd go to her house to check on her. A week later, Pam arrived at my house, arm in arm with my brother. They had gotten back together and seemed as if nothing had happened. She smiled at me and never once mentioned the phone call she had made to me. The next month is when things escalated, again. I came home from school to my entire family sitting in the living room. They told me to sit down. I thought someone had died. My mother told me, "Your brother let us know how you're feeling." I had no idea what they were talking about. "Feeling?" I asked. My brother looked at me with pity in his eyes. "Pam told me that she wasn't the one who called you. You called her, and you're the one who wasn't feeling well." "What?" "No, that's not what happened. She called me every night for 2 weeks crying, saying she wanted you back." "That's not what she said. She said that you called her with your problems and that she wasn't sure what to do." I was immediately angry that her lies were continuing and that my own family believed them enough to stage an intervention. I showed them the text messages she'd sent me, played them voice messages, and showed my call history. That put an end to that lie. After that, I wanted nothing to do with her. My brother broke up with her again. She called him hundreds of times and sent hundreds of messages. She showed up at our house a few times with baked goods, wanting to apologize, but we ignored her. Eventually, she left us alone and we didn't hear from her for almost a year. On my last day of class before winter break, during my sophomore year, I walked out of school and was met by an incredibly unwelcome surprise. This is where things got scary. Pam was pacing in front of the school, biting her fingernails and scratching her head. Her face looked sunken in, and she had bags under her eyes. I almost didn't recognize her. I began to cut across the front lawn with my friend Liz, just to avoid her. But she saw me and walked as fast as she could in my direction. She outreached her arms for a hug, but I stopped. The first thing she said was, "You're mad at me?" I asked her what she was doing there, and she laughed quietly. "I wanted to apologize for whatever your brother told you. I'm sick, Oz." She used a nickname only my brother called me. "I know, please don't talk to me anymore." I started away, knowing my brother was parked waiting for me around the corner. Pam reached out and grabbed my shoulder as I did. I quickly pulled away and said, "I'm serious. Leave us alone. I think you need some help, Pam." She immediately began to cry, but I turned away and left. My brother pulled into the front parking lot of the school and opened his car door for me. "Is that Pam?" He looked through his front mirror. "Yeah, I don't know what she's on, but she's crazy." That night at around 1 a.m., there was a knock at our door. My dad went to it and looked through a peephole. He said, surprised. "I think it's... What the heck? I think it's Pam." "Don't open it. I think she's doing drugs," my brother said. My mom wanted to call the police, but my brother and my dad said we should just wait until she went away. A few moments later, she rapped on the door harder and more violently. We heard her wailing and yelling, "I hear you! You better effing let me in!" As she cried. "She has a baseball bat or something," my brother said, coming from his room where he'd looked out the window. I looked from the den window. She looked like something out of a horror movie. She was wearing a grubby dress, barefooted. Her hair had been cut to above her shoulders and was in a wild, halfway in a bun, halfway out mess. She had wiped her makeup down her face like a ghoulish movie character. She looked thinner than she did in the daylight, and she swung a metal baseball bat around as she stumbled about our yard. "I'm calling the police. She must be drunk," my mother said. "No, it's fine. She's just giving a show. She'll leave." We didn't know people actually behaved like this. It was all eerily entertaining for a moment, like watching a true crime show. But just as she had been maniacally stumbling around, she stopped. She stood still, staring vacantly up towards the upstairs bedrooms, tilting her head side to side, up and down, and licking her lips. "What is she on? Heroin or something?" my dad asked. Pam began to shift back and forth between laughing and yelling and crying. We all sat down as my brother tried her phone and her mom's phone to try and get her to leave. We sat there and listened to the frightening, animalistic sounds of her outside. But then they stopped. We checked the windows and she was gone. We all sat in silence for a moment, taking in the strange encounter. My father just chuckled and shook his head. My mother shook hers, pitying the girl for being so disturbed. But I was frightened. No one, except perhaps my brother, had seen just how quickly her demeanor, her mental state unraveled. From overprotective nature, to small lies, to pathological lies, to full-blown manic outbreaks. But this was her worst, and we didn't expect anything more to come of it. That she'd fade away from our lives since now, she knew we weren't giving in to her desperation. But in the next 2 years, we learned how wrong we were.